So this is the demonstration for the collage project. So for this project, we're going to be focusing on color, and to do that, we're going to be using abstraction. So you don't need your artwork to look like anything in particular. If you want to have inspiration or references from landscapes or objects that you see around you, you're totally welcome to do that. Some of the examples that we'll look at in class do that. So if you want to draw inspiration, that's totally good too. So for this project, we're going to be using just found materials. So I have some packaging, I've got some origami paper, have some Post-it notes, got some advertisements, got a flyer. And if you have any construction paper around, that's obviously a really good option too. So you can have just a blank page of color. But if you want to use magazine pages that have like little bits of images in them, or stuff that has words and text, that can be really fun too. So to start off with, I'm just going to demonstrate a couple of ways to kind of cut up these objects and break them down. The most obvious one is obviously scissors. So it's really easy to make like defined shapes with scissors. So, you know, we're going to be thinking back to stuff we studied before. So thinking of like composition, maybe I want to have some repeating shapes. So maybe I'll make a bunch of these orange circles, something like that. And none of this has to be precise. This is supposed to be like a fun project that's more experimental and kind of a chance to relax before winter break and try out some new things. So we can do that. If you have an X-Acto knife or a box cutter, you can also use that to cut things up. You can get really precise lines that way. If you do that, be careful, you know, use good knife safety. One final option that can be kind of fun to break paper down is you can also lay it flat, put your ruler down on top of it, hold your ruler down really firmly, like press firmly, and then pull up. And it's a fun way that you can kind of rip straight edges. So you have a little bit of a raw edge, but it's also a straight line. Or you can just tear things the old-fashioned way if you want some of those rough edges, something that feels a little bit more natural. You can do that too. So just breaking down my paper so I have some things to play with before I start. One of my favorite ways to start a collage, and a really convenient thing to do, is to kind of start with some objects ready to go and cut out. And that way I can just practice placing them down. So I'm gonna arrange my composition before I start gluing anything, and that way if I don't like something, I can come back and adjust it. So for this collage right now, I'm kind of thinking about warm colors. So I'm using pinks and reds and oranges and yellows. So stuff that's warm, kind of makes you think of summer, natural things. They're very vibrant. They're kind of exciting. Just laying all of those out. And maybe I like them. Maybe I want to move them around some more. This paper I'm using is 1/2 of an 18 by 24 sheet, but you can do a little bit smaller if you want. I would say don't go any smaller than 9 by 12. That just won't give you enough room to work. So we can do that. I like this composition a little bit more, but it still feels kind of sparse. So I'm just gonna keep adding things in until I'm happy with it. Maybe I wanna have some rhythm where I have these vertical rectangles kind of following throughout. Maybe I wanna have some repetition. You can also think about playing with light versus dark colors. So maybe I want to have some more real pale yellow here, kind of break up this block of pink. And then as I keep going, I'm gonna think about possibly putting in a focal point here, so something that the eye is gonna be naturally drawn to. So one way that I might think about doing that is to use complementary colors. So right now I'm kind of working with these warm tones. I've got a lot of orange here, and so the complementary color of orange is going to be blue. So if I put any blue down with this orange, it's really going to stand out, and it's going to make them both more vibrant and high contrast. So maybe I'm going to break this up with some of this blue Post-it note. See, if you don't tape stuff down, you can move it around easier and keep adjusting. And yeah, I'm just gonna keep going until I feel like I'm done. So maybe I want the whole paper covered, maybe I don't. If you ever want to have some really high contrast, maybe I want to cover part of my image with some black paper. And so my colors look really vibrant on top of it. We've got that contrast even more. You know, if you've got papers that have patterns on them, you can work with them or against them. So I've got this striped Post-it note. Maybe I want to have the stripes going vertically. Maybe I don't. Maybe I want to cut some of my papers diagonally, so I have some of these like dynamic lines that are kind of gonna lead us across the canvas, or paper in this case, but you know what I mean. Yeah, I want to put that shape up there. So yeah, there's really no one right or wrong way to do this project. Just keep going until you find something that you're happy with. You know, I don't really like the way this looks, but I like some of the things that I used. I like these, I like this. Maybe I'll try something different, you know, and I can just keep experimenting until I get something that I'm happy with. I don't need to be a perfectionist about this. We're just gonna experiment. We're gonna have some fun. I think I want to have more of these circles. I think that would be cool. This is also kind of a fun way to do some recycling in art. So a lot of this stuff I've got would have just ended up in the trash anyway. Now it gets to be art. Maybe I want to break up one of my circles, add some variation. I really like this contrast between the orange and the blue. I definitely want to keep that. So maybe for this version of the collage, I'm going to focus on using complementary colors throughout it. So I'm going to choose orange and blue, and I'm just going to use different colors of orange and blue throughout. And that's going to give me some contrast. It's going to look really vibrant. I'm going to have warm and cool colors happening. So sometimes when I do collages, I will use pieces of art that I didn't think came out. So like I have a little print here that didn't do what I wanted it to, but it's gonna get repurposed into this. So, you know, if you have any paper that you've painted on but you're not really happy with it, that's a really fun thing to use for collage. I'll keep doing that. Yeah, we're just gonna keep going. You want the majority of your surface color covered so it doesn't look like you have just a couple of small things like floating in this giant space. So you can do that. You can think about using positive and negative shapes. So, you know, I have these circles cut out that are a positive shape, and then maybe I want to use the sheet of paper that I cut them out from with the negative shape on it, where it has the blank where the circles used to be. That might be kind of interesting. Yeah, maybe I'll break it up. Maybe I'll have a little bit of yellow. So yeah, and you can see I've got some colors that are much more saturated. Like I've got this orange that's super saturated, it's really vibrant. And then I've got this pale yellow that just has a lot less color happening on there. It's kind of a pastel. So pastel colors, they won't show up as much. Like the more vibrant colors will kind of overpower them and take over. So that's something that you can use to your advantage. Since I've got this yellow, maybe I want to add in some of its complementary color and add just like a tiny bit of purple here. Maybe that's too much happening. Maybe I don't want that. Maybe I want to focus on having orange, a couple of similar colors, and then my only complementary color happening is blue. So you can just keep making those decisions. But yeah, I'm just gonna keep going until I get something that I'm happy with, and then when I'm happy, I will come back in and I will glue this down. If you have like a piece of mat board or poster board or something like that, that can be a really nice surface to collage on because it will stand up better. If you do use paper, just be really careful that you don't use too much glue. If you get the paper really wet and with glue, it can kind of buckle and warp and your collage won't sit flat. So just be careful with how much glue you use. If you want to use a glue stick, that's a really nice option for this because it's just not, it doesn't have as much moisture, so it's not going to affect the paper the same way. But yeah, so that's the beginning of that. You can just have some fun with this one. If you have magazines you want to use, you can totally do that. I didn't happen to have any on hand today, so I just used what I had around. Alrighty, well that is that project, and we will talk about it more in class.